What would you do if a single necklace uncovered a secret that could change everything? This incredible story of family, loss, and redemption will leave you speechless. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from viewers all around the world. The courtroom was bustling with quiet murmurs and the occasional shuffle of papers. Judge Daniel Carter adjusted his glasses as he prepared for what he expected to be another routine case. At 52, Daniel was a seasoned judge, known for his fair but firm demeanor. His courtroom was a place where justice was served without bias, and he took pride in that. Today's docket included a young woman, Chloe Bennett, who had been arrested for theft. The case seemed straightforward on paper. Witnesses claimed she had stolen valuable jewelry from a high-end boutique. Daniel had seen cases like this countless times, and he expected nothing out of the ordinary. The bailiff called Chloe's name, and the courtroom doors opened. A young woman in her early 20s entered, her hands cuffed in front of her. She had a fragile air about her, thin, with hollow cheeks and tired eyes that hinted at a difficult life. Despite her weary appearance, there was a quiet resilience in the way she carried herself. She wore a plain outfit, but one thing stood out, a delicate gold necklace with a small locket. As Chloe took her seat at the defendant's table, Daniel's eyes were drawn to the necklace. His heart skipped a beat. The locket looked eerily familiar, too familiar. It was identical to one he had given his daughter, Lily, years ago, before she tragically passed away. Daniel's chest tightened. He felt the breath leave his body for a moment as he stared at the locket. It can't be, he thought, shaking his head slightly to clear the memories that suddenly overwhelmed him. The locket had been a special gift for Lily on her 16th birthday. He remembered how her face had lit up when she opened the box. She had worn it every day, saying it made her feel like he was always close to her. After her death in a car accident 8 years ago, the locket had gone missing. Daniel had assumed it was lost forever. Now, seeing it around Chloe's neck was like seeing a ghost. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the papers on his desk, trying to maintain his composure. But his mind raced with questions. How does she have it? Could it be the same one? Or is it just a coincidence? Ms. Bennett, you are charged with theft, the prosecutor began, his voice breaking through Daniel's swirling thoughts. The evidence against you includes surveillance footage and witness testimony. How do you plead? Chloe glanced nervously at her public defender, a young woman who looked equally overwhelmed. Not guilty, Your Honor, Chloe said quietly, her voice steady but strained. Daniel struggled to focus on the proceedings, but his eyes kept returning to the necklace. The glint of the gold chain under the courtroom lights was a constant distraction. He studied Chloe's face, searching for something, anything, that could explain the locket's presence. Ms. Bennett, Daniel interrupted, his voice steady but laced with curiosity. I noticed the necklace you're wearing. Is there any particular significance to it? Chloe's eyes widened slightly, and her hand instinctively went to the locket, her fingers brushing over it protectively. It belonged to my mother, she said softly. She gave it to me before she passed away. Her answer sent a chill down Daniel's spine. He leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. I see, he said, his tone carefully neutral. Proceed. As the prosecutor laid out the case, Daniel found it harder to focus. His mind kept returning to the locket and Chloe's words. If it truly was the same locket, did that mean Chloe's mother had been connected to Lily? The timeline fit. Lily had passed away shortly after giving birth to a child, a baby Daniel had never had the chance to know. Could Chloe be? Daniel called a recess, needing time to collect his thoughts. As the courtroom emptied, he remained seated, staring at the defendant's table where Chloe had been moments ago. The memories of Lily were too vivid, too raw. He couldn't ignore the possibility that Chloe might be the granddaughter he'd never met. As Daniel rose from his seat, he knew one thing for certain, he needed answers. Whether the necklace was a coincidence or a key to a deeper truth, he was determined to uncover the story behind it. For the first time in years, Daniel felt a flicker of hope, a fragile but persistent feeling that perhaps his daughter's memory had not been completely lost after all. And with that thought, the gears were set in motion for a discovery that would change all their lives forever. As the courtroom emptied during the recess, Judge Daniel Carter remained seated at the bench, his thoughts swirling in a storm of uncertainty and emotion. The locket around Chloe Bennett's neck had struck a nerve, awakening memories he had long kept buried. He glanced down at the file in front of him, labeled State vs. Chloe Bennett, and hesitated. The professional part of him warned against digging deeper into a defendant's personal life, but his heart insisted otherwise. Taking a deep breath, Daniel reached for the file and began flipping through its contents. The details of Chloe's life painted a bleak picture. Born to a single mother, Chloe had spent her early years moving between foster homes after her mother passed away when she was only 5 years old. No information about her father was listed, and there were no clues as to how she had come to possess the locket that now consumed Daniel's thoughts. As Daniel read on, one detail jumped out: Chloe's date of birth. She had been born exactly 1 month before his daughter, Lily, had died in a car accident. The timeline matched perfectly. He leaned back in his chair, his heart racing. Could it be possible? Could Chloe be the child Lily had given birth to shortly before her death? The thought both thrilled and terrified him. He had always known Lily was pregnant when she died, but the circumstances surrounding the baby had been murky at best. The father had never been involved, and Lily had been living with a friend at the time. Daniel had been too consumed by grief to investigate further, and in the years that followed, the baby's fate had remained a painful mystery. Now, staring at Chloe's file, Daniel felt a surge of determination. If there was even a chance that Chloe was his granddaughter, he needed to know. But how could he confirm it without crossing ethical lines? He couldn't simply ask her outright, not yet. As Daniel sat in silence, a memory surfaced, one he hadn't thought about in years. It was the last time he had seen Lily alive. She had come to visit him at his home, her hands resting protectively over her growing belly. They had argued that day, about her future, the baby, and her refusal to tell him who the father was. "Dad," Lily had said firmly, her voice cracking with emotion, "I can handle this on my own. You don't need to worry about me." "I'll always worry about you, Lily," Daniel had replied. "That's what fathers do. But you don't have to do this alone. Let me help you." Lily had shaken her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'll be fine, Dad. I promise." Those were the last words she had spoken to him. A week later, she was gone. The baby's whereabouts had been lost in the chaos of her death, and Daniel had never forgiven himself for not pushing harder to stay involved. Determined to find answers, Daniel decided to confide in someone he trusted. That person was Emma Brooks, Chloe's public defender. Emma was a sharp, no-nonsense attorney who had earned a reputation for fighting fiercely for her clients. Daniel trusted her professionalism and believed she might be willing to help him, despite the unusual circumstances. Later that afternoon, Daniel called Emma to his chambers. She entered with a curious expression, clearly surprised by the request. "Judge Carter," she began, "I wasn't expecting to hear from you. Is there an issue with Chloe's case?" Daniel hesitated for a moment, then gestured for her to sit. "This is personal," he said, choosing his words carefully. "I noticed something during today's hearing. The necklace Chloe was wearing, it belonged to my daughter." Emma raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Judge, with all due respect, are you certain? It's possible it's just a coincidence." Daniel shook his head. "I'm certain. I gave that locket to my daughter, Lily, years ago. She wore it every day until," he paused, his voice faltering. "Until she passed away." Emma's expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear that. But how does this connect to Chloe?" Daniel leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Lily had a child shortly before she died. I've always believed that baby was lost to the system. But now, seeing Chloe and that locket, I have to wonder if she could be my granddaughter. Emma studied him for a moment, clearly weighing her options. Judge Carter, she said slowly, this is highly unusual. You're presiding over her case. If anyone finds out you're personally involved. I know, Daniel interrupted. That's why I'm asking for your help. I can't do this alone. I need you to look into Chloe's background, discreetly. If there's any chance she's connected to my family, I need to know. Emma sighed, leaning back in her chair. I'll see what I can do. But I can't promise anything. And if this gets out? It won't, Daniel said firmly. Thank you, Emma. That evening, as Daniel sat alone in his office, he stared at the locket once again in his mind's eye. The possibility of Chloe being his granddaughter was both exhilarating and terrifying. If she truly was Lily's daughter, it meant he had a second chance to reconnect with the family he thought he had lost. But if he was wrong, he wasn't sure he could handle the disappointment. For now, all he could do was wait, and hope that Emma's investigation would bring him closer to the truth. The next day, Daniel Carter was back in the courtroom, but his mind wasn't on the case at hand. Despite the seriousness of the charges against Chloe Bennett, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just another defendant standing before him. The locket she wore felt like a link to a past he thought he had lost forever. He knew he couldn't let the day end without addressing the burning questions swirling in his mind. After the trial session adjourned for the day, Daniel made an unusual decision. He asked to speak with Chloe privately in his chambers. Chloe seemed surprised by the request, but she complied, escorted by a bailiff who stayed just outside the door. When the door clicked shut, the air grew thick with tension. Chloe sat in the chair across from Daniel's desk, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her wide eyes darted around the room, taking in the rows of law books and certificates on the walls. "Why did you want to see me, Your Honor?" she asked hesitantly, her voice trembling. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the gold locket around her neck. "Chloe," he began, his voice gentle but firm, "I couldn't help but notice your necklace yesterday. It's familiar to me." Chloe instinctively touched the locket, her fingers brushing over its smooth surface. "It was my mom's," she said softly. "She gave it to me before she died." Daniel's breath caught at her words. "Your mother," he said carefully, "what was her name?" Chloe hesitated, as if unsure whether she should answer. "Her name was Lily," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lily Bennett." Daniel felt the world tilt around him. He leaned back in his chair, struggling to maintain his composure. The name confirmed what he had suspected, this was no coincidence. "Lily Bennett," he repeated, his voice trembling. "Your mother, she passed away when you were very young." Chloe nodded, her expression turning guarded. "She died when I was 5. I don't remember much about her, but she always wore this necklace. She told me it was special." Daniel swallowed hard, his emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "And your father?" he asked. "Do you know anything about him?" Chloe shook her head. "No. Mom never talked about him. She said he wasn't part of our lives." Daniel's hands tightened into fists under the desk. The guilt of not being there for Lily in her final moments and for not searching harder for her child weighed heavily on him. He had always assumed the baby Lily carried had been lost to the foster care system, and now, sitting before him, was the granddaughter he had never known. But how could he tell her? How could he possibly reveal the truth without shaking her already fragile world? And what if he was wrong? He needed confirmation before he could say anything, but every part of him wanted to reach out to her and hold her close. "Your Honor," Chloe said cautiously, interrupting his thoughts, "why are you asking me these questions? Do you know something about my mom?" Daniel hesitated, torn between his duty as a judge and his desire to connect with Chloe. "I may have known her," he said finally, his voice steady but filled with emotion. A long time ago. Chloe's eyes widened. You knew my mom. She was very important to me, Daniel admitted, his heart aching as he spoke. And seeing that necklace brought back a lot of memories. Chloe looked down at the locket, her fingers tracing its outline. She said it was a gift from someone special, she murmured. Someone who loved her very much. But she never told me who. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He had given Lily that locket as a token of his love and support, never imagining it would one day connect him to the granddaughter he had never met. He wanted so badly to tell Chloe everything, but he knew it wasn't the right time. Chloe, he said gently, I promise I'll do everything I can to help you. But there are some things I need to look into first. Will you trust me? Chloe hesitated, her eyes searching his face. There was something about his tone, the way he spoke to her, that made her feel safe, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Okay, she said quietly. I'll trust you. After Chloe left his chambers, Daniel sat alone, his thoughts racing. He couldn't deny it anymore, Chloe was Lily's daughter, his granddaughter. But the journey to proving it and earning her trust was just beginning. He knew he had to tread carefully, not only for Chloe's sake but also to ensure justice was served in her case. He pulled out his phone and called Emma Brooks, Chloe's public defender. Emma, he said, his voice steadied despite the storm raging inside him, I need your help. There's something about Chloe's case I need to understand. Emma hesitated on the other end of the line. This isn't just about the case, is it? No, Daniel admitted. It's personal. And it's about to change everything. As he hung up the phone, Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had spent years haunted by the loss of his daughter, but now, for the first time, he saw a chance to rebuild the family he thought he had lost. He wasn't going to waste it. The next morning, Daniel Carter met Emma Brooks, Chloe's public defender, in his chambers. Emma was a seasoned attorney with a sharp mind and a no-nonsense attitude, but as she took her seat across from the judge, her curiosity was evident. Thank you for coming, Emma, Daniel began, folding his hands on the desk. I need your help. There's something about Chloe Bennett's case that may extend beyond the charges she's facing. Emma raised an eyebrow. You're talking about more than just the trial, aren't you? Daniel nodded. Yes. I believe Chloe might be connected to my family. Emma's sharp gaze didn't waver. Connected how, exactly? Daniel took a deep breath. The necklace she wears. It's identical to one I gave my daughter, Lily, years ago. Lily passed away shortly after having a child, a daughter I was never able to find. I believe Chloe could be that child. Emma leaned back in her chair, clearly processing this unexpected revelation. Judge Carter, she said carefully, this is significant. But it's also delicate. Are you sure about this connection? I can't be completely sure, Daniel admitted, but the locket, her mother's name, and the timeline all match. I need to know the truth, Emma. And if Chloe is my granddaughter, I need to help her. Emma crossed her arms, her expression thoughtful. This is a complicated situation, Judge. For one, you're presiding over her case. If anyone finds out you're personally involved, it could compromise the trial. I understand the risks, Daniel said. That's why I'm asking for your help. I can't investigate this myself, but I need someone I trust to look into Chloe's background. I need answers. Emma sighed, her professional demeanor softening slightly. All right, she said. I'll see what I can do. But if this backfires, you'll have more than just personal fallout to deal with. Daniel gave her a grateful nod. Thank you, Emma. And please, keep this discreet. Chloe doesn't know anything yet. I'll keep it quiet, Emma promised. But if I find anything, you'll need to decide how to proceed carefully. This could change Chloe's life. Emma dove into Chloe's background with her usual determination. She started with the public records available about Chloe and her mother, Lily Bennett. The records confirmed what Daniel had already told her: Lily had passed away in a car accident, and Chloe had entered the foster care system shortly after. Emma's search led her to an old hospital record from the time of Chloe's birth. The file revealed that Lily had given birth at a small community hospital and listed her address at the time, a location Emma recognized from Daniel's description of where Lily had been living during her pregnancy. The name of the baby's father was left blank on the birth certificate, but the record mentioned a gold locket left with the newborn, a detail Emma couldn't ignore. "This is it," Emma murmured to herself as she stared at the document. "This connects everything." Emma's investigation also uncovered a darker chapter in Chloe's life. After Lily's death, Chloe had been placed in foster care, moving between several homes. Some records hinted at neglect and instability during those years, but Emma also found a troubling report involving a foster family that had accused Chloe of theft, an accusation eerily similar to her current charges. The report described how Chloe had been blamed for stealing a valuable bracelet, though the evidence was circumstantial at best. The incident had left Chloe with a tarnished record, making her an easy target for future accusations. Emma's brows furrowed. Someone's been stacking the deck against her for years, she thought. The following evening, Emma returned to Daniel's chambers with a folder of documents. She placed it on his desk, her expression serious. "Judge Carter, I think you were right," she said. "There's overwhelming evidence that Chloe is your granddaughter." Daniel opened the folder, his eyes scanning the records. The hospital file, the details about the locket, and the timeline all pointed to one conclusion. He felt a lump in his throat as he stared at the proof. "It's her," he whispered. "It has to be her." Emma nodded. "But there's more. Chloe's been through a lot, Judge. The foster system wasn't kind to her, and she's been blamed for things she likely didn't do. This theft charge might be another attempt to pin something on her." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then we need to clear her name. I won't let her carry this burden any longer." As Emma left his chambers, Daniel sat alone, staring at the folder. The weight of the discovery settled over him, but so did a sense of purpose. Chloe wasn't just another defendant, she was family. And he would do whatever it took to protect her, even if it meant facing challenges he had never prepared for. For the first time in years, Daniel felt a glimmer of hope. He had lost Lily, but now, he had a chance to rebuild the family he thought he had lost forever. And he wouldn't waste it. With the revelation that Chloe was his granddaughter, Judge Daniel Carter was more determined than ever to ensure her safety and clear her name. However, his position as the presiding judge in her case made everything more complicated. He couldn't act directly, but he wasn't about to sit idly by while Chloe's life hung in the balance. With the help of Emma Brooks, Chloe's public defender, he devised a plan to uncover the truth behind the charges against her. Emma, now fully committed to helping Chloe, began digging deeper into the theft accusation. The evidence against Chloe seemed suspiciously weak: no fingerprints, no surveillance footage clearly showing her involvement, and only a single witness, the boutique owner, a man named Robert Lang. Lang claimed that Chloe had been in the store the day of the theft and that he had seen her near the display case where the stolen necklace had been kept. However, when Emma visited the boutique to review the surveillance footage, she discovered something odd: the footage from the time of the alleged theft was missing. Lang insisted that the cameras had malfunctioned, but Emma wasn't convinced. "It's too convenient," she told Daniel during a private meeting in his chambers. "The only footage missing is from the exact window of time the theft supposedly happened. And the witness? He doesn't seem trustworthy." Daniel frowned, his mind racing. "Do you think someone's setting her up?" Emma nodded. "It's starting to look that way. Chloe's background makes her an easy target. Her time in foster care and the false accusations against her in the past give people like Lang an excuse to pin the blame on her." Emma's instincts paid off when she found a former employee of Lang's boutique, a young woman named Clara Hughes, who had worked there until a few weeks before the alleged theft. Clara agreed to meet Emma in a quiet cafe to discuss her experiences with Lang. Robert Lang isn't exactly an honest man, Clara admitted, stirring her coffee nervously. He's been in financial trouble for a while. I left because he started cutting corners and treating the staff terribly. Emma leaned in. Did you ever notice anything unusual about how he handled theft accusations? Clara hesitated before nodding. There were a couple of times when he claimed items were stolen, but I'm not sure they actually were. He'd report the thefts to his insurance company, and a few weeks later, he'd suddenly have enough money to cover his debts. Emma's eyes widened. Are you saying he staged the thefts for insurance fraud? I'm not saying anything for certain, Clara said cautiously. But it wouldn't surprise me. Armed with Clara's testimony, Emma began piecing together a case to prove Chloe's innocence. She requested Lang's financial records, which revealed a pattern of large insurance payouts following theft claims. Meanwhile, Daniel used his connections discreetly to gather more information on Lang's dealings. One of Daniel's sources uncovered a critical piece of evidence, a transaction log showing that Lang had recently sold a necklace matching the description of the stolen item to a private collector. The date of the sale was suspiciously close to the date of the alleged theft. This proves he never intended to report the necklace stolen, Emma said, showing Daniel the evidence. He sold it for cash and blamed Chloe to cover his tracks. Daniel felt a surge of relief. This could clear her name, he said. But we need to be careful. Lang won't go down without a fight. The next day, during a pre-trial hearing, Emma presented her findings to the court. She argued that the charges against Chloe were baseless and that Robert Lang's financial troubles and history of questionable theft claims cast doubt on his credibility as a witness. Lang, who had been called to testify, grew visibly nervous as Emma grilled him about the missing surveillance footage and the transaction log. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. The footage was just a technical glitch. And the necklace you sold to a collector just days after it was allegedly stolen? Emma pressed, holding up the transaction log. Was that a glitch too? Lang's face turned red, and he refused to answer further questions. The judge overseeing the case, one of Daniel's colleagues, took note of Lang's behavior and agreed to Emma's request to dismiss the charges against Chloe. When the ruling was announced, Chloe sat frozen in her chair, tears welling up in her eyes. She looked at Emma, then at Daniel, who was watching from the back of the courtroom. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope. As the courtroom emptied, Daniel approached Chloe. Congratulations, he said softly. You deserve this. Chloe wiped her tears, her voice trembling. Thank you. I don't know why you've been so kind to me, but, thank you. Daniel wanted to tell her the truth right then and there, but he knew it wasn't the right time. Instead, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're stronger than you realize, Chloe. Don't ever forget that. Later that evening, as Daniel sat alone in his office, he reviewed the case files one last time. Chloe's freedom had been secured, but the larger question remained, how would he tell her the truth? She deserved to know who she was, but he didn't want to overwhelm her after everything she had just been through. As he stared at a photo of Lily on his desk, Daniel made a silent vow. He would protect Chloe, no matter what. And when the time was right, he would tell her everything. The courtroom victory had brought Chloe freedom, but for Daniel, it was only the beginning. The weight of the secret he carried, knowing that Chloe was his granddaughter, pressed heavily on him. He wanted to tell her the truth, but after all she had endured, he feared overwhelming her. Still, he knew the moment was drawing near, and every passing day strengthened his resolve. A few days after the trial, Daniel was walking to his car after finishing a long day at the courthouse when he saw Chloe sitting on a bench outside. She was holding a sketch pad, her pencil moving lightly across the page. She hadn't noticed him yet, her face focused and calm. Chloe, he said softly as he approached. She looked up, startled, but then smiled hesitantly. Judge Carter. I didn't expect to see you here. Daniel gestured to the space next to her. Do you mind if I join you? She nodded, shifting over to make room. Daniel sat down, his eyes flicking to the sketchpad. What are you drawing? She turned it toward him, revealing a rough but beautifully detailed sketch of a locket. The same locket she always wore. I draw it a lot, she admitted. It helps me feel closer to my mom. Daniel's throat tightened. She must have been very special to you. She was, Chloe said, her voice soft. I don't remember a lot about her, but I know she loved me. And this locket, it's the only thing I have left of her. Daniel hesitated before speaking, his voice low. What if I told you I knew your mother? That she was someone very special to me too? Chloe's eyes widened. You knew her? Yes, Daniel said, his heart pounding. Lily and I were family. Chloe stared at him, her expression a mixture of shock and confusion. Family? How? Daniel took a deep breath, steadying himself. Lily was my daughter, he said softly. That makes you my granddaughter. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Chloe blinked, trying to process what she had just heard. You're my grandfather, she whispered. Yes, Daniel said. I didn't know about you until recently. When I saw your locket, it brought back so many memories. I had no idea Lily had a daughter, my granddaughter, until you walked into that courtroom. Chloe's hand went to her locket, her fingers trembling. My mom never talked about her family, she said. I thought I didn't have anyone. You've always had someone, Daniel said, his voice breaking. You've had me. I just didn't know where to find you. Chloe pulled back slightly, her expression guarded. Why now? She asked, her voice filled with emotion. Why are you telling me this now? Where were you when I was in foster care? When I felt like I didn't belong anywhere? Daniel's heart ached at her words. I didn't know, Chloe, he said earnestly. After your mother passed away, I was told the baby, your mother's child, was lost to the system. I looked for you, but there were no records, no way to find you. When I saw you in court, everything changed. Chloe studied him, her eyes searching his face for any sign of dishonesty. I don't know what to think, she said finally. This is a lot. I understand, Daniel said gently. You don't have to decide anything right now. I just needed you to know the truth. And I want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what. For a moment, there was silence between them. Chloe looked down at her sketchpad, her fingers tracing the edge of the paper. You really knew my mom? She asked softly. I did, Daniel said, his voice filled with warmth. She was smart, kind, and fiercely independent. She had your same determination. Chloe's lips quirked into a small, bittersweet smile. She always said I got my stubbornness from her. Daniel chuckled. She wasn't wrong. For the first time, Chloe looked at him without hesitation. There was still uncertainty in her eyes, but there was also a glimmer of trust. I don't know where this goes, she admitted. But I think I'd like to know more about her. And maybe, about you too. Daniel's chest swelled with emotion. I'd like that very much, he said. As they sat together, the barriers between them began to dissolve. Chloe asked Daniel about Lily, what she was like as a child, her favorite things, and the moments that defined her life. Daniel shared stories he hadn't spoken of in years, his voice trembling with both sorrow and joy. For Chloe, it felt like discovering a part of herself she had never known was missing. For Daniel, it was a chance to reconnect with the memory of his daughter and build a bond with the granddaughter he thought he had lost forever. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in shades of gold and orange, Daniel and Chloe sat together, their connection growing stronger with each passing moment. For the first time in years, both of them felt a sense of belonging they hadn't thought possible. But their journey was far from over. There were still challenges to face, wounds to heal, and a future to build. Together, they were ready to take the next step, one filled with hope, love, and the promise of a family reunited. The revelation of their familial bond had left both Daniel and Chloe emotionally raw, yet hopeful. Chloe's initial hesitation had softened into cautious curiosity, and Daniel was determined to nurture this fragile connection. For years, he had lived with the pain of losing Lily, and now, having Chloe in his life felt like a second chance. But second chances often come with challenges, and for Daniel and Chloe, the road to rebuilding trust and forming a relationship would not be easy. A few days after their emotional conversation, Daniel called Chloe. "I was wondering if you'd like to visit my home," he said gently. "I have something I think you should see." Chloe hesitated. Though she was beginning to open up to Daniel, the idea of stepping into his world, one so different from hers, was daunting. But the curiosity about her mother and the promise of learning more about her past outweighed her apprehension. "Okay," she said finally. "I'd like that." When Chloe arrived at Daniel's house, she was struck by its warmth. The walls were lined with bookshelves and family photos, giving the home a lived-in, personal feel. She noticed several pictures of a young woman with bright eyes and a radiant smile. "Is that my mom?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel nodded, his eyes misting as he handed her one of the frames. "That's Lily," he said softly. "She was about your age in this photo." Chloe stared at the picture, her fingers tracing the edges of the frame. For the first time, she saw her mother not as a distant memory, but as a vibrant, real person. "She looks so happy," she murmured. "She was," Daniel said. "She loved life, and she would have loved you." As they moved through the house, Daniel shared stories about Lily, her love for art, her stubborn determination, and her kind heart. He showed Chloe a box of Lily's belongings he had kept over the years, including letters, sketches, and small mementos. Chloe picked up a drawing Lily had done of a butterfly. "She liked to draw?" she asked. "She was an incredible artist," Daniel said. "Much like you." Chloe's eyes widened. "How do you know I draw?" Daniel smiled. "I saw you sketching outside the courthouse. It reminded me of Lily." The realization that she shared a passion with her mother filled Chloe with a bittersweet sense of connection. For the first time, she felt like she belonged to something bigger, a family she never knew she had. As the evening progressed, Chloe grew more comfortable. Sitting together in the living room, she finally asked the question that had been weighing on her mind. "Why didn't my mom tell me about you? Why did she keep me away from you?" Daniel sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I've asked myself the same question many times," he admitted. Lily was fiercely independent. She wanted to prove she could handle everything on her own, even when she didn't have to. When she became pregnant, she was worried about what people would think, about how she could manage as a single mother. "She didn't want to burden you," Chloe said quietly, understanding her mother's mindset. "Exactly," Daniel said. "But not knowing you existed, that's something I'll regret for the rest of my life." Chloe's expression softened. "It's not your fault," she said. "It sounds like she was just trying to protect us both." Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Chloe began spending more time together. Daniel helped Chloe navigate her newfound freedom, encouraging her to think about her future and pursue her dreams. He enrolled her in art classes and helped her explore options for further education, something she had always longed for but never thought possible. Chloe, in turn, began to trust Daniel more deeply. She asked him questions about his life, his career, and his relationship with her mother. Each answer brought them closer, weaving together the threads of their shared history. For Daniel, these moments were nothing short of transformative. After years of loneliness and grief, he finally felt a sense of purpose. Helping Chloe succeed became his mission, and seeing her smile, a smile so much like Lily's, was the greatest reward. Despite their progress, the shadows of Chloe's past were never far behind. One evening, as Daniel and Chloe were reviewing her art portfolio, a letter arrived at Daniel's house. It was addressed to Chloe, but there was no return address. Chloe opened it cautiously. The note inside was brief but chilling: "You don't belong there. Don't forget where you came from." Her hands trembled as she handed the note to Daniel. "What does this mean?" she asked, her voice shaking. Daniel's jaw tightened as he read the words. "It means someone doesn't want you to move forward," he said firmly. "But we're not going to let them stop you." Chloe nodded, but the fear lingered in her eyes. Daniel knew that her past wouldn't let go easily, but he vowed to protect her at all costs. That night, as Chloe prepared to leave, Daniel handed her a small box. "I've been waiting for the right time to give you this," he said. Chloe opened the box to find a matching locket to the one she wore, an identical piece he had kept after Lily's death. "This belonged to your mom," Daniel said. "She always said it was a symbol of connection, of family." Chloe's eyes filled with tears as she fastened the second locket around her neck. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." Daniel smiled, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We've both lost so much, Chloe. But now we have each other. And I'm not going anywhere." As Chloe hugged him for the first time, Daniel felt the weight of years of grief begin to lift. Together, they were building something new, something strong, unbreakable, and filled with hope for the future. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Daniel and Chloe. The bond they had begun to form grew stronger with each passing day. For Daniel, every moment spent with Chloe was a step toward healing the wounds left by Lily's death. For Chloe, discovering a family she never knew she had was like finding a missing piece of herself. But there were still challenges to overcome, and both of them knew that their journey was far from over. The threatening note Chloe received had unsettled both of them, but Daniel was determined not to let fear dictate their lives. He reached out to Emma Brooks, Chloe's public defender, for advice. "This note is a reminder that Chloe's past isn't entirely behind her," Emma said during a meeting in Daniel's chambers. "But the good news is, we have resources now. With your influence and my connections, we can ensure her safety and build a legal foundation for her future." Daniel nodded. "I want to do everything possible to protect her. No one is going to hurt her again." Emma helped Chloe file a report about the note, and Daniel hired a private investigator to look into its origins. Though the source remained anonymous, the investigation sent a clear message: Chloe wasn't alone anymore, and anyone attempting to harm her would face consequences. One evening, Daniel invited Chloe to dinner at his house. It was a quiet affair, just the two of them, but the significance of the evening wasn't lost on either of them. As they sat at the dining table, Daniel handed Chloe a small envelope. "I've been thinking about this for a while," he said. "And I want you to know how serious I am about being in your life." Chloe opened the envelope to find a legal document, a petition for guardianship. She looked up at Daniel, her eyes wide with surprise. "You want to be my guardian?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "You're an adult now, and you don't need anyone to tell you how to live your life. But I want to be there for you in every way I can. Not just as a judge or a mentor, but as your grandfather." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "I've never had anyone fight for me like this," she whispered. "Thank you. It's what family does," Daniel said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "And no matter what happens, you'll always have a place here." Chloe's life began to stabilize. With Daniel's support, she enrolled in an art program at a local college, pursuing her dream of becoming an artist. Her first assignment was to create a piece that reflected her personal journey, and Chloe poured her heart into it. When the final piece was unveiled at a student showcase, Daniel attended with pride. The artwork depicted a young girl standing at a crossroads, with one path leading into darkness and another toward a glowing light. Above the girl's head, two golden lockets intertwined, symbolizing the connection between Chloe and her mother, and now, her grandfather. The piece received a standing ovation, but for Daniel, the greatest moment came when Chloe stood by his side and introduced him to her classmates. "This is my grandfather, Judge Carter," she said, her voice strong and confident. "He's the reason I'm here today." Daniel's heart swelled with pride. In that moment, he knew that everything they had endured had been worth it. As Chloe's life blossomed, Daniel continued to search for answers about the threatening note and the shadows of her past. Eventually, the investigator uncovered a connection to Chloe's last foster family, specifically, a former foster brother who harbored resentment toward her success. The authorities intervened, ensuring Chloe's safety and putting an end to the threats once and for all. For Chloe, it was a relief to finally close that chapter of her life. And for Daniel, it was a victory that solidified his role as her protector and advocate. The story culminated in a family dinner at Daniel's house. For the first time in years, the home was filled with laughter and warmth. Chloe sat at the head of the table, her smile brighter than ever, as Daniel told stories about Lily's childhood. As the evening wound down, Chloe pulled out her sketchpad and presented Daniel with a drawing she had been working on. It was a portrait of Lily, Daniel, and Chloe together, their expressions radiating love and joy. "It's how I imagine we would have been," Chloe said softly. "If Mom were still here." Daniel's voice caught in his throat. "It's perfect," he said, his eyes misting. "Just like you." As Daniel walked Chloe to the door that evening, he placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've brought something back into my life that I thought I'd lost forever," he said. "You've given me hope again." Chloe smiled up at him. "And you've given me a family," she replied. "Something I never thought I'd have." As she left, Daniel stood on the porch, watching her walk into the future with confidence and hope. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. The journey they had taken together had been filled with pain, but it had also brought healing, love, and the promise of a new beginning. Daniel turned back toward the house, his heart full. Chloe wasn't just his granddaughter, she was his second chance. And together, they were building a future that Lily would have been proud of. This story is a beautiful reminder that even in the darkest moments, love and family can find a way to shine through. Daniel's journey from loss to hope and Chloe's path from struggle to belonging show us the power of connection and resilience. Their story teaches us that it's never too late to rebuild, to forgive, and to find the family we thought we lost. If you found this story as heartwarming and inspiring as I did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know what you think.